I know everyone's riding high on that Trump train right now. At least a lot of you are. Some of you might be down in the dumps. And trust me, there is plenty to talk about. Donald Trump is less than 2 days into being the president again, and there's no shortage of news. But what I have always prided this show on is being able to bring you also the most important news happening here in Kansas City that arguably has a much larger impact on your day-to-day life. So I know that, a lot of you are still riding high, but on a Wednesday morning, hang with me here because first off, it was 19 degrees when I got in the car today. So that's, I'm fired up about that. Although I still got to wear a vest in the studio. It's a little chilly. But more importantly, a trial started yesterday in Jackson County where a court challenge to the Missouri State Tax Commission's August order to cap residential property values at 15% is now underway. Jackson County is trying to overturn that order in court yesterday, and the trial will continue today. So, yes, there's important things, great things happening right now in Washington, D.C., but we got to bring it back here to Kansas City because your government is right now trying to overturn a ruling from the Missouri State Tax Commission that increases your property taxes to the absurd, illegal levels that they raised them to 2 years ago. And yes, we are almost 2 years removed from that disastrous 2023 assessment. And that means there's going to be a new assessment in 2025. So this is a critical moment for thousands of homeowners and business owners in Jackson County, Missouri. This is such an important trial because how this trial plays out will determine not just your property taxes for now, but that will obviously have an impact on your property taxes when the new assessment begins later this year because they do them every other year in Jackson County. So this is happening right now. It is one of the most important things that has happened the entire year in the Kansas City area. And I couldn't believe I saw Channel 9 doing something on it last night, and maybe I missed the other TV stations. I can readily admit I might have missed them, but I don't see it as the lead story anywhere else outside of seeing it on Channel 9 this morning on their website. This is an embarrassment to Kansas City media. This is an enormous story. You're talking about people trying to just stay in their homes and the government that they elected suing the state to try to basically rob people blind. That's what's going on here. So here's the report from Channel 9 last night on the trial ongoing, and it will roll into today.
One interested observer in court today was Elizabeth Morrow. She said 2 homes on her farm in eastern Jackson County were increased 300 times their previous value without notice.
We've been there for generations. I have the original abstract on the farm, and I think they're trying to take it away from me. Because it's ridiculous. I don't want to bulldoze it down. The one house that's old, it has no heat or water.
And county leaders maintain the state tax commission order is, quote, unlawful, unenforceable, and political.
All right, that's Andy Alcock with Channel 9 KMBC. So he's doing a good job. At least the cock's on it. He's taking care of business there for Channel 9, so he's doing great work as we roll. What are you guys laughing at? It's only 6:09 in the morning. Okay.
No, the cock's on it.
Mark, say something. Just open your mic because you're losing it.
I'm still waiting for my email from Plowcock. That's what I'm waiting for.
No relation.
The old
No
KU
relation.
professor. Yes, no
Okay,
relation.
confirm that at this point.
Hey, Andy's a good reporter, and the fact that he hung in the business for 40 years with that name is amazing. So good on him. That's tremendous work. But with that, if you're a Jackson County resident, you've got to be sitting here this morning and watching this thing with bated breath. I know you might be thinking about Trump and all the great stuff he's doing, but I'm telling you, there's nothing that Donald Trump is going to do in the next couple of days, weeks, months that will have as big an impact on you immediately like this, John.
I don't know if it's aggravating, interesting, ironic. that this is political.
Yeah, well, that's what Jackson County's alleging. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, yeah.
What? Now, I know we talked to Sean Smith. He's conservative. I'm not quite sure of the makeup, but I'm making the presumption that largely it's a Democratic group.
Yes.
A group of Democrats.
Well, I think what they're doing is they're alleging the state tax commission, because anything statewide.
Yes, I see. The
statewide.
cram down.
Yes, the cram down from the big bad Republicans in Jeff City.
It's all political.
Yes, they're trying to tell us. They're trying to tell us what to set our tax rates at in Jackson County. No, you are alleged to have broken the law. If you increase property taxes or the assessed value over 15%, the law is you have to go out there and do a physical inspection of the home. And how many hundreds of people have we talked to in Jackson County over the last year and a half on this story who have said, I've got Ring doorbells all over my property, I've got cameras all over the place, and I've got no evidence that they showed up here to do a physical inspection. And the burden of proof should be on the county to show that it was at these homes where they jacked up the assessment 30, 40, 50%.
Oh, I believe some people we had Tyler Technologies.
Yes.
That the group this was farmed out to, like these 45-second blow-bys.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they had evidence, there is somebody here in a black hoodie.
Well, yes, there's some of that. But then also, remember, Angie Racono, KCTV5, did a report that showed one neighborhood, they would have had to have done like 12-second physical inspections.
Right.
To do the amount of inspections they had to do in that neighborhood based on the time that they spent in that neighborhood. There is no way that they handled this thing legally or properly. And the burden of proof should be on Jackson County to prove that it did it on the up and up. And if you've got people saying, I've got cameras all over the house on the exterior of my home, and nobody showed up for a physical inspection, well, guess what? You don't get to jack up the assessed values 30%. Now, there is a potential fallout on this that I do feel some empathy when it comes to the fallout of this. The fallout of this could be bad for the cities in Jackson County because they have set their mill levy rates based on the assessed values that the county finalized. If they roll back all these assessed values to a maximum of 15%, well, that obviously is going to have a huge impact on potentially city revenues because guess what? All of a sudden, you're not going to be paying as much in taxes because the mill levies were set based on what those assessed values were before potentially they got overturned in court. And that's what's happening this week. So that will have to be dealt with after the fact. That's not a reason to uphold the current assessed values. It's not. You have to roll them back. You have to properly assess them. And then from there on out, you have to make sure, if you are Jackson County, and we're going to need the state of Missouri to help out here. We're going to need our friends in Jeff City. Heck, you got the Speaker of the House now from Lee Summit. He's a Jackson County resident in John Patterson. You've got good people in state government like Jeff Coleman, state rep, who is also somebody who is involved, I believe, with the State Tax Commission and a special committee on tax reform. So they're going to have to get involved, and they're going to have to look out for Jackson County and slap around, figuratively speaking, I will add, the people in charge in this county who do not care one lick about you. And until the next election comes around, there's nothing anyone can do about it. I mean, there's a recall Frank White effort going on right now. I hear the votes are getting close, and I hope that gets accomplished. But until it does, man, Frank White is not looking out for Jackson County residents. But he was a pretty good ball player back in the day.
Well, he's looking for some renovations on his office.
That's right. Yeah. He does need to use some COVID dollars 5 years after the fact to get a upgraded piece for his office. That's how it goes. 913-4087-957. It's great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. On the text line, Pete, remember, Frank White has that leftover COVID money. He's got to spend it this year. So he's got plenty of that Red Lobster money to build his new office.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money.
Oh! Oh, Jesus. Oh, yeah. He's got that Red Lobster money. Not sure how Pastor Funderburk is doing with his Red Lobster money, but either way, Frank White has plenty of that Red Lobster money. Spot on, my man.
Red Lobster money ain't what it used to be, though.
That's a great point. Nothing is, right? Nothing is. 913-408-7957. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, local reaction to Donald Trump's J6 pardons. We will hear from a guy who is now pardoned and the controversy that has come from that. Next on 95.7 FM KCMO. 6:20 on a Wednesday morning. I'd say a chilly Wednesday, but when it's, 19 degrees and it was -2, I mean, it's balmy, man. It's 20 degrees warmer than it was yesterday morning, so I'm rocking.
Turned on the lawn sprinkler for a little.
Oh, man. So Donald Trump has been in office for all of not quite 48 hours, right? And one of the more controversial decisions that he made was to grant sweeping pardons of January 6th defendants. Now, this is about 1,500 plus people charged with various crimes. The vast majority of these individuals were not violent on that day, not defending that day at all. If you have been a listener of this show for a long time, you know that I've called that day a great embarrassment. I don't sit here and find any excuse for somebody who, hit a cop, broke the law. I don't have any sympathy for them. But there's a lot of people who were not violent that day who have been through way more than they should have ever gone through from the DOJ and the legal system at large. And it's fair to say, okay, do you commute those sentences? Do you pardon them? What do you do? There's a lot of that has gone on. That doesn't justify people acting like hooligans, but both those things can be true at the same time. So you had this one individual who returned home, and he talked to Channel 9, KMBC, Matt Fleener. They've been on the ball this week. I give credit where it's due in this town. And here's what he told Matt Fleener with Channel 9.
Just curiosity, really. Curiosity killed the cat, right?
That's why C.J. Walden says he climbed a wall and entered the U.S. Capitol January 6th, 2021.
From that point, it was just more of see what was going on.
Walden took pictures of what happened, leaving after about 5 minutes.
All right, let's just start there. He walks in, he leaves after 5 minutes. This guy should not be in prison for the rest of his life or anything like that, and he wasn't ever in prison. He was on probation for 3 years. That being said, just a little bit of advice, okay? Left, right, in the middle, doesn't much matter. When you see riots going on, don't go over there and say, I wonder what's going on over here.
Right.
Go the other way.
Rubbernecking.
Yeah, let's not put ourselves in those positions, okay? It's not political. It's just have a little common sense. A lot of people were mistreated, but also, come on. Hey, what's this over here? No, let's not do that. Let's not make things worse during a chaotic situation. All right? Let's not do that.
The U.S. Marine veteran sentenced to 3 years probation that ended Saturday. He said he's grateful for President Trump's Monday pardon that wipes his record clean.
I do regret it kind of, but, me being me, I would have done it anyway. I didn't break anything out. I didn't try to beat up any cops.
This is not a good sign for democracy.
Representative Emanuel Cleaver is not happy President Trump pardoned so many, especially those that attacked police officers.
If you want to pardon people for beating up on police officers, you're going way, way too far in terms of talking about reform and so forth and how much you love the blue.
The congressman said he worries what type of protection he may or may not receive into the future in the Capitol based on President Trump's action.
Oh, that's absurd. That last line, Emanuel Cleaver is fearful for his own safety in the Capitol now. There are plenty of things you can criticize this decision for from President Trump. But my gosh, Emanuel Cleaver, he's better off in the Capitol than he is walking down the street with his own name on it.
Right.
Right? I'm
Walk
telling
down
you.
the street with his name on it?
Yes. He is much better off in the Capitol building from a safety perspective than he is walking down Emanuel Cleaver Boulevard in Kansas City. That's a fact. This whole thing of he doesn't know if he's going to have proper protection in the Capitol. Fine. And you want to criticize Trump for some of the pardons, okay, it is fair to have that conversation. I do think, and this is just my gut, what Trump did here is when he found out Biden did a preemptive pardon on his entire freaking family, he said, you know what, screw it. I'm going all out. I'm pardoning everybody involved with the J6 stuff, and that's it. Not saying it's right, but I do think that's the conclusion that he came to. I think he said, if these guys are going to be as reckless as that, with all these pardons that Biden threw out the last day, not even last hours of his time in office, then I'm taking care of my people. Once again, is that the best decision? Debatable, but I believe that Biden pushed him to that. Is this going to be something that is a defining moment of Donald Trump's administration? No, it's not. The media is going to try to make it that way, but it's not. It won't be the thing that makes him a successful or unsuccessful two-term president. But I do think a lot of this was driven and motivated by what he saw Joe Biden do his way out the door. 913-408-7957. Mike's on KCMO. Go ahead, my man.
Yeah, how come nobody asked Cleaver how come he was so okay with the city council letting those 26 people who were videoed being violent, videoed hitting cops, and videoed destroying property?
Yeah, you mean in the summer of 2020?
Yeah, exactly. This whole January 6th thing, and I was hearing some of the people, they were forced to sign confessions for stuff they didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm not, I'm like you. I got the same opinion of it. I think it was stupid of people what they did. But, keep it in context. And this was nothing else but the Democrat Party, the woke, basically saying at that time, if you dissent, you're going to go to prison. We got gulags, we got, whatever you want to call it. We've got them here, and you dissent, we will make sure. Show me the person, I'll show you the crime.
Well, I'm glad you brought up, too, what happened here in Kansas City, because you're right about that. Remember, there were violent protesters on the plaza during the George Floyd protests. And the Kansas City, Missouri City Council, despite the fact that these people were charged, wiped all those charges right off the books. And that came in I think that officially happened in 21. But I remember sitting here being like, are you kidding? That's crazy. Now, I really don't care for any of it, to be honest. But that is more egregious because you never even allowed the courts to do their jobs. You just basically said, no, we're the city council and we support these people and what they did. Therefore, we are wiping these charges off the books. That's more egregious in many respects. 913-408-7957. As we roll to the bottom of the hour, we'll have the news coming up in 2 minutes. We'll get to you. The 6 at 6. Top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour at the end of the hour. Pete Mundo on 95.7 FM. All right, this on the text line I just can't get behind. I see a lot of it, though. You've got January 6th defendants who are now back in the Kansas City area. They are doing some local media interviews. They've done some television hits. And I thought that Matt Fleener did a very fine job with his Channel 9 piece that we played right before the break, where this one guy's like, I probably shouldn't have done that, but I was kind of just roaming around and said, hey, what's going on over here? And he ended up getting 3 years probation for that, which ended on Saturday. Of course, he gets a full pardon from Trump earlier in the week. That happened yesterday. And I think the more controversial part of this is, of course, those who were acting violently that day. And J.D. Vance said a couple of weeks ago that they were not going to pardon those who acted violently on January 6th. It was really for the nonviolent individuals. So what changed? J.D. Vance had no reason to say that 2 weeks ago if it wasn't true. The reason that changed, I believe, is because of the brazen approach Joe Biden took to pardons his final hours in office. That doesn't make it right. I think there's hypocrisy here across the board. But I believe that was the trigger behind it. Now, on the text line, 913-408-7957, this comes in, and I know that this is a common theory and thought that you had Antifa infiltrating January 6th that day, and that's what led to the violence. Well, then why would you pardon members of Antifa if you're Trump? That doesn't make any sense. If you thought it was Antifa committing the violence, why are you giving them pardons? And if you're someone who was there just for a peaceful protest, and then you started acting violently because, well, Antifa twisted your arm, with all due respect, what does that say about you? If I'm standing on my front lawn and my neighbor tells me to break the law, come on, Pete, go, just do. You break the law. If you fall for peer pressure to then go ahead and break the law, that's still on you. I mean, we are conservatives, right? We do believe in personal responsibility in the end. So I'm not going to sit here with a lot of sympathy when it comes to that angle or any other angle. That being said, if there are people who have been through hell for 3 years, 4 years, and did things and were just kind of roaming around in a nonviolent way, commuting the sentence might be best. But either way, a pardon in that situation is not unreasonable for people who are non-violent and have been through a lot. John's in Overland Park. Go ahead, John. You're on KCMO.
Yes, I saw the left-wing press just mercilessly attacking Trump yesterday because he pardoned the J6 people. But, you know, when Joe Biden pardoned the man that masterminded September 11th and killed over 3,000 people and leveled 2 buildings and caused many wars that our soldiers died in, Joe Biden pardoned him from the death penalty. The liberal press did nothing. They didn't say one word. It's so hypocritical. And what the man did on September 11th was much worse than the J6 people. And Joe Biden took the death penalty off the table for that man.
You know, he did that for a lot of people. You know, there were a lot of very controversial pardons down the stretch or taking people off of death row, as you note there. People who are now going to get to live and end up serving life in prison. And that is an atrocity. And I do believe that probably factored in some of those absurd pardons factored into Donald Trump's decision. And they didn't spend a minute. Isn't it amazing, John? They didn't spend a minute on Joe Biden pardoning his entire family for literally a 10, 11-year period of time in the last hours or minutes of his presidency. They didn't do anything on that.
Yeah, I don't think he could legally pardon them. You know, my wife cannot forgive me for doing something wrong if I didn't do something wrong.
Yeah.
So how can Joe Biden forgive his family members if they haven't been convicted yet?
Yeah, I think that's got to be challenged in court, to be honest, because if not, that thing will be abused by every president, Republican and Democrat, for years, for as long as this country's around. That will get abused in the worst ways imaginable, and I hate that for America.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate you. That's something that has got to be challenged in court, not because it's Joe Biden and not because he's a Democrat, but because I don't want Donald Trump to be able to give preemptive pardons to Don Jr. or Eric or Barron or any of them. I mean, that is an insane. You want to talk about 2 tiers of justice? That is the definition of 2 tiers of justice. So I'm not sitting here suggesting that 2 wrongs make a right, but I am going to say that these preemptive pardons, if this thing can be fought in court, and there's a lot of legal experts that suggest it can be fought in court, it better be fought in court as soon as possible, because you literally are getting to third world banana republic style stuff. If you have people who can run for president, have their families commit crimes that no one knows about, but if they get busted, well, they've got a preemptive pardon for that period of time, so can't really do anything about it. Heck, there could be challenges around whether or not a president could pardon himself or herself, right, going forward. A preemptive pardon. That was part of the conversation nationally over the last few years. And now we're living through it. And it's courtesy of Joe Biden, the guy who said he was going to uphold and restore democratic norms, doing anything but his way out the door. 913-4087-957. The 6 at 6 is just a few minutes away here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Did you see this yesterday when, speaking of all this J6 stuff, Donald Trump was getting asked about it by Peter Alexander of ABC News, and Trump did this press conference yesterday, and the press conference was really about the $500 billion in investments of artificial intelligence that is coming from Oracle and, other companies around the world called the Stargate AI project. So he's got some of the big wigs there at the press conference. And then, of course, he starts taking questions from the media. And regardless of what you think of Trump or Biden, isn't it great to have a president who, takes questions from the press? Isn't that a breath of fresh air?
Talk about a bombshell.
Right? So, yeah, the guy who's the leader of the free world actually answering questions that might be of interest from the press working on behalf of the American people. Whoa, what a novel concept. So, you haven't seen one of these in a while, and you got the freewheeling Trump up there. And Peter Alexander is asking him about this J6 stuff, and Trump's like, hey, pump the brakes there, big fella. Let me answer. Quiet down.
And we had 1,500. We have 16 under review. As you know, we commuted about 16 of them because it looks like they could have done things that were not acceptable for a full pardon. But these people have served years of jail, and their lives have been ruined. And in many cases, listen to me for a second. Stop interrupting. They served years in jail, and if you look at the American public is tired of it. Take a look at the election.
Stop it. Stop interrupting. Stop interrupting. I apologize. You could hear Peter Alexander say in the background. I do think there's going to be a little more deference to Donald Trump this time around. Not a ton. I think a little more, John.
No, it was there. He didn't shift his gears.
Yes.
And go into some deal. This is my room.
Yeah.
Like Obama.
Yeah, he didn't do that.
This is my house or some,
Yes,
Just, I'm giving you an answer. Just stop talking.
Yeah.
Just like a father almost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're going to be quiet. You're going to listen to me. I'm going to answer your question. And then maybe if I allow you, you can speak again. That's how it goes. Oh, the gaslighting is just unbelievable. 7:05 on a Wednesday hump day morning. Thanks for making KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 part of your morning. Whether it's on the radio or, of course, on our stream, Alexa, Google Home, or the KCMO Talk Radio app. So the media is already exhausting me. Maybe you feel the same way, in which case you can just tune in to us and we'll cut through all the BS for you. That's what we do well here on KCMO with some of their coverage. Here's a headline that I saw on abcnews.com. Listen, part of the job, I don't get hazard pay for it. Maybe I should put in, I'll have to work that out with the bosses on the next contract. But I go to all these different websites. I watch all these broadcasts. I listen to the radio and the podcasts and YouTube and do it all. And, I see how they are portraying certain stories. John, whether I like it or not, I got to do it, man.
Well, I'm with you, but I'm fortunate because I just peruse the headlines. But I'm always interested in the AP angle of everything.
There's always the Associated Press angle to things. And they certainly, they had a banger yesterday, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Headline here, GOP-led states emboldened to roll back trans rights. And I'm like, oh, brother, what is this? So I actually click on the story. I should have done what John does and just rolled past the headline, but I had to click on the story like the sucker that I am. And I go, oh, the story's based out of Topeka, Kansas. It's right in our backyard. And it reads as follows. Republicans and Democrats in Kansas agree that concerns about the economy drove voters to support Donald Trump by a 16% margin. They also know that ads from Trump and others targeting transgender rights resonated with voters. Now stop right there. What the Associated Press would call targeting transgender rights, I would call protecting my daughters. Protecting my daughters on the soccer field, protecting my daughters in a locker room from having to see male genitalia, protecting my daughters in a bathroom. The gaslighting on how they frame this as ads from Trump and others targeting transgender rights is so disingenuous. And deep down, they know it, but they have no shame. They don't care. The facts aren't really relevant to them. Donald Trump didn't get elected because of those ads. Let's be very clear. Okay, but it was an easy way to score a cheap political win. Because amazingly, there's a large number of people who for some reason believe that my young daughters should be accepting of men walking into their bathroom and changing in their locker rooms and competing against them in sports. And I hope they double down on it because it's one of the reasons they're losing like normal, common sense, working class people. It appeals to overeducated, high income, woke individuals, but like regular people aren't down with that, John.
Remember, we were talking about over-indoctrinated.
Yeah, over-indoctrinated.
Mike called yesterday.
Yes, that's very good. Yeah. That's very good. Instead of overeducated, over-indoctrinated.
Yeah, same initials.
Yes, excellent work there.
I guess not.
I like that. But either way, you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, where's this story going? The story goes on to note, while Kansas Republicans say property tax cuts are their top priority, they are also pushing to ban gender-affirming care for young people, including puberty blockers, hormones, and even though they are rare for minors, surgeries. They say that, too, resonates strongly with voters. Republicans are broadly emboldened by GOP electoral success to continue pushing state-level bills to curtail transgender rights. Once again, no one is curtailing anybody's rights. This is about protecting women and protecting children. They don't want to frame it like that, though. No one is saying that when you're an adult, you cannot do what you want to your body. There's not a bill out there like that. This is saying, hey, wait till you're 18. Just like we ask you to wait to smoke cigarettes, to drink alcohol, to get tattoos, for crying out loud. It's about protection of minors and protection of women. But in the eyes of the Associated Press, which wrote this story that I read on abcnews.com, they always frame it through the lens of what? Attacking or curtailing transgender rights, as if this is somehow a civil rights movement of our time. We're reliving the 1960s here. No, we're not. You see, they used to care about women's rights. Now they don't. Just supporting women's rights is not woke enough. Now you've got to trample on women's rights to achieve this made-up class of victimization that they have magically created out of thin air. And it's so disingenuous and it's so unfair on so many levels. But it's also what you expect. I mean, you know, this guy John Hanna writes for the AP out of Topeka. I can't believe Republicans in Topeka still talk to this guy. Now, I know there's nobody else, and they kind of have to because there's nobody else covering the Capitol on a day-to-day basis, sad to say, outside of this guy for the AP. But my goodness, I mean, he is as biased as they come. I remember I bumped into him at a urinal. Like 4 years ago, I bumped into him at a urinal, and he was beyond obnoxious. He was just, I mean, he was rude. He was just classic example of somebody who thought that they were smarter than everybody in the room because he was the one Democrat in a room full of Republicans at a state Republican convention. It was just, oh my gosh, it makes me want to throw up just thinking about it. It really does. But this is the kind of media coverage you're going to be getting here. So we got to be able to cut through it. Let's go to Topeka. That's where John's at. What's up, John? How are you, my man?
Hey, good morning, Pete. Doing pretty good. I think it's more about protecting parents' rights to raise their children as they wish rather than giving letting the children do as they want and running the asylum. So because the children, they don't know which way they're wanting to go. They have no idea. I mean, my daughter, when she thought she was a they, them, whatever, you know, she was making crazy decisions, and her friends were coming over, and one of them was a transgender girl who happened to, when I talked to the other parents, turn into a pumpkin at midnight because he would be a girl before midnight. Then all of a sudden, and then some hanky-panky would be going on. So I was like, wait a second here. These kids are
I am beyond confused. I've got pumpkins after midnight. I've got hanky-panky. I can't keep up with whatever you're trying to say here, John.
What I'm trying to say is he was a girl. He was a girl before midnight, but after midnight, he went back to a boy. So the hanky-panky would go on after the parents were asleep because he would go over to the girls and have sleepovers with the girls. So anyhow, and he was a she before midnight, but after midnight, he turned back into the pumpkin. You see what I'm saying? And then it was like, oh, yeah, you're a boy now again after midnight when all the eyes were off. So it's more about protecting the kids against themselves and these boys that are using this to try and get in there and have sleepovers with the girls, and the parents trying to protect their children, and that's how I kind of see this as.
How's your daughter doing?
Well, she's doing a lot better. I was going to use this against her, the pronouns. I was going to say, you want me to say they, them, and whatever, and all these other pronouns. I was going to say, well, I want you to address me as His Majesty Captain Woke Dad, because those are my pronouns. And my wife said, don't you dare, don't do it, don't feed into it, because what you're getting into, you're in the pig lot, and that ain't mud.
Yeah. How old is
so I'm like, yeah,
well,
okay, but I listen to my wife. But she's 17 now. She's starting to come out of it.
Yeah.
She's actually, she's dressed. She was dressing like a guy. Now she's dressing like a girl, wearing dresses, and she's making her own prom.
So it's almost like a 21st century tomboy phase for some. I mean, I'm probably underselling it a little bit, but that's why we don't let 13-year-olds make decisions of that magnitude. John, you're proving the point. So thank you for doing that.
Exactly, and the more power the parents have over their children, the better off the children are.
That's so true. Thank you, buddy. Have a great day. I'm glad things are turning around for you, and still trying to figure out the pumpkins and pre-midnights and post-midnights and all that stuff.
It's a Cinderella thing.
I got you. Okay, I got to watch Cinderella, I guess, again with the girls.
Oh, the carriage turns into a pumpkin after midnight.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, John. I was getting a little confused there. I haven't finished the coffee yet, so I'm going to keep it rolling. But that's what this is about. It's not about rolling back the rights of any adults to do with your body as you see fit. And I'm sorry, but people don't have a right, men do not have a right to walk into a female restroom and demand that they use it. Sorry, I've got 3 daughters, and as long as I'm here, I am not going to roll with that. And as long as it's a topic of conversation, especially here locally in Kansas and Missouri, where it is in this ABC News story, we are not going to let it fly. Facebook Marketplace is supposed to be a place where you could, sell things to people and trade things with individuals. And, it's supposed to be fairly safe because theoretically you can look up somebody's profile and see what they're all about, right? That's the whole idea behind it. Well, as someone who recently got done selling a fairly big item on Facebook Marketplace, I can tell you the scams are rampant. And then I saw this story from Channel 9, KMBC, that said 2 women were arrested after a Facebook Marketplace robbery in Lee's Summit. So this came from Channel 9 yesterday. Authorities arrested 2 women following a robbery in Lee's Summit involving a Facebook Marketplace transaction. And the robbery took place on Friday. The incident began when the victim wanted to sell an iPad to someone over a Facebook Marketplace deal. According to police reports, a gray Ford Escape carrying 2 female passengers approached the victim's vehicle. After initial negotiations, one of the suspects allegedly pepper sprayed the victim and attempted to steal his phone and the advertised iPad. The victim was dragged as he tried to retrieve his property, sustaining multiple injuries, including fractures and lacerations. The suspects fled the scene, prompting a multi-agency pursuit that extended into Kansas. The Kansas Highway Patrol successfully apprehended the suspects after the vehicle crossed state lines. The 2 individuals taken into custody. I'm going to try to get this right. I've been looking at these names for 5 minutes.
Oh, I worked on that one, but I don't have it in front of me now.
Azania J. Jones, Dartiona C. Rollins.
That was a hard one.
Yeah, it's DAQRTIONA.
QRT was where I couldn't.
I don't get it. What the hell is Q? How do you have those 3 letters in a row in any word? It doesn't make any sense. I suppose it says a lot about the parents as well. Let's name our kid DAQRTIONA. What is, someone's got to explain to me what the hell that word is and what that name is. Docker Tiona? Any luck there, Mark? Mark's clueless. He's got no clue.
I'm trying to find it in the article so I can read it myself.
All right. Well, you take a look and you let me know if you got the answer. Anyway, as someone who recently tried to sell something on Facebook Marketplace, I can tell you right now, I mean, I was getting scammed left and right. And a lot of the scams come from people who you can tell because they're not speaking English. I mean, I hate to say it, but here's what would happen. They would be these profiles that wouldn't have a lot of information on the individual. They usually had an Asian background, but it's not like, hey, they're Asian and they're in Olathe. They wouldn't have any information on where they're from. And they would have some broken English question for you about where you are and what you're selling. And it's like, well, you can see what I'm selling. And then they would say, hey, let's meet up. And I would say, where are you located? And one of them told me Junction City. And I'm like, wait, you're going to drive 2.5 hours for this? Come on. And I would say, do you know how far that is from where I'm at? And they would say no. Mm-hmm. So, like, you've got to ask questions. Now, this is different because these people were from the area, obviously, and we're trying to run some scam. But you got to be careful on these deals.
The Q is silent. Darshana.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm just making that up.
No, it'd be Tiona. It's Aujune. I'm going to say Aujune on the first one.
The Q is silent.
Aujune.
Come on, Mark. The Q is silent. You know what, though? That actually makes sense. Let's put a Q in our kid's name and make it a silent Q. I always wanted to have a kid with the name with the Q in the name.
Here's the thing. The web could have typoed it, and we'll never know. It looks like a Czechoslovakian license plate anyway.
That's true. There were also similar robberies per court documents in Overland Park, Kansas City, and Independence. So just be careful. The whole idea of Facebook Marketplace was that it would be better than Craigslist because you would get some information on people. But now, if people are just catfishing you and pretending to be somebody they're not, that could actually set you up for a worse situation because your guard is down, John.
These are nightmare scenarios we had when I was in school. Why don't we call someone you don't know to drive you in a car, Uber,
yes,
to Facebook Marketplace to meet someone you don't know?
Yes.
To buy something you have no idea what shape it's really in.
We are getting a little too trustworthy, I would say.
Maybe so. Well, the thing where everything has to go 360, we need to get all the way back around here pretty quick.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I had to sell something. I met in a public place, a public parking lot. Made sure it was daylight, a lot of people around, and, you check people out before you start walking over.
Most police stations have a place.
And that's the other thing.
That's the way to do it.
There are police stations.
The price chopper out there may be a little more dicey.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because there are police stations, especially in Kansas City, that allow you to basically do online trades.
There are parking spaces marked.
Yep.
At the Overland Park one I've been to.
You're right. So that is just good bit of advice if you're going to be going down that road.